Chapter 19, My Teacher's an Alien. Starts on page 120, Chapter 19, Peter's Choice. That afternoon, I finally began to understand Peter's alternate plan. Actually, it took me a while to figure it out. I knew there was something strange going on when Peter, the kid who always knew the answer but never bothered to give it, started raising his hand for every question that came along. And suddenly it all came clear to me. Peter wanted to be picked by Broxholm. He had decided that this was his chance to live the kind of science fiction adventure he'd been dreaming about. He figured if he really tried, he might just be able to make it from bright but unmotivated to being, without question, the best student in the class. You could almost see the gleam in Broxholm's alien eyes when Peter unleashed his mighty brain. We were having a history lesson at the time, and Peter started to answer every question perfectly. Broxholm started asking harder questions, but Peter never blinked. He just kept reeling off the answers. Even I had no idea how smart that kid was. And as for Broxholm, I swear that alien must have memorized an encyclopedia. Or maybe he had one transplanted into his head. Who knows what these people could do? When the school was over, I dragged Peter off to the side of the playground. "Are you crazy?" I hissed. "What are you doing?" "Plan B," said Peter. "If we can't unmask Broxholm, I want to be one of the ones to go on the ship." "Forget Plan B," I yelled. "You don't know what they're going to do to you up there. They're bad." "You don't know that," said Peter. "They kidnapped Miss Schwartz." He shrugged. "That still doesn't mean that they're bad. They may be so far above us that they think of us like we're some sort of ants or something." I didn't say a word, but he could tell by my expression that I thought that was stupid. "Maybe they're scared of us," he continued. That made me laugh. "I'm serious," said Peter. "Think of the conversation you had with him yesterday." "I can't. It still scares me." "No. Think about it," said Peter again. "Maybe these people are really peaceful. Maybe they've seen how much we fight, and they're afraid if we get much further into space, we'll cause some huge war." "You don't know that," I said stubbornly. "Anyway, maybe we won't have to worry about it. Let's just go to the drugstore to get our pictures." And took all of our money for the pictures. I thought about explaining to the girl behind the counter that we were trying to stop an alien invasion, but I figured she probably wouldn't buy it. We forced ourselves not to open the envelope until we were in the park. "You open it," I said, handing the envelope to Peter. He hesitated for a moment, then tore the envelope open and pulled out the pictures. His face fell. "What is it?" I asked. Without saying a word, he handed me the photos. My heart sank as I flipped through them. Peter had done a good job. The beams and timbers of the attic show up perfectly. The focus and exposure were fine, but the force field with Miss Schwartz in it had come out as nothing but a blue streak. That was all. Just a blue streak down the middle of each picture. It looked like a flaw in the film, or maybe some trick of the light. You couldn't even see Miss Schwartz at all. "These aren't going to do us any good," I moaned. Peter nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's not your fault," I replied, but I knew he didn't believe me. By Thursday, the whole school seemed to be on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Stacy got caught drawing dirty pictures on the blackboard. Mike tried out a new word he learned from his uncle, who was a sailor. And Peter waved his hand like crazy every time Broxholm/Smith asked him a question. The ones who were really having a hard time were the kids in the middle. See, by this time, everyone was starting to believe the rumor about our teacher being an alien. I think the fact that Peter and I knew it was true, combined with the fact that we weren't trying to convince them, I think the fact that Peter and I knew it was true, combined with the fact that we weren't trying to convince them, was what really did convince them. They figured if it was a joke, we'd be trying to fool them. Since we weren't, it had to be for real, or something like that. Anyways, the kids in the middle were going nuts because they knew Bruxholm wanted the 3 most average kids in the class. But what was an average kid? No one knew. So none of them knew how to behave to keep them from being kidnapped. Most of them just acted the same as usual, except that they were really nervous. Every time one of them answered a question, you had the feeling they were trying to decide whether they should answer it right or wrong. It was like they were asking themselves, will a right answer give me a one-way trip to an alien spaceship? I'll be glad once this is over, I said to Peter that afternoon during recess. Me too, he said. But I didn't like the kind of dreamy way he said it. Are you scared? I demanded. I'm terrified, he said. But that doesn't change my mind. School just got wackier as the day went on. By the time the last bell rang, I got the feeling every kid had heard that there was supposed to be an alien invasion at the concert that night. If I wasn't so worried, it would have been so funny. Did you hear about the invasion? Kids would say. Did you know that the aliens are coming tonight? I wanted to say, no, the aliens aren't invading. They're just coming to kidnap some of us. Although, for all I knew, the reason they wanted to study us was so that they could invade sometime in the future. I felt sorry for Mr. Van Wyck. He had hoped to have the best spring concert ever. Now it was beginning to look as if it would be the biggest disaster of his career. I'm cutting the Stars and Stripes from the program, he told me that afternoon. He was trying to be nice about it, but I could tell that he was really disappointed. I'm sorry, I said. I just couldn't get that trill. No, it's not you, said Mr. Van Wyck sadly. The whole band has fallen apart. I don't know what I've done wrong. How could I tell him that he hadn't done anything wrong? That his concert was just another casualty of an alien invasion. And that is the end of chapter 19. We only have 2 chapters left.